I buried my husband 2 years ago. Yesterday I saw him at Lenox Square Mall buying coffee with another woman. I ran toward him crying. He looked at me confused. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I think you have me confused with someone else." But the voice was identical. The marks on his face, everything. I followed him to his house. What I discovered there stopped my heart. But before we get into the story, please support us by liking and subscribing right now. I also want to say hi. Leave your name, city, and the word present in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from, even in faraway places. It was a Saturday in October in Atlanta when my world collapsed for the second time. The first time was 2 years ago when I got that call at 3 a.m. David had suffered a massive heart attack in Charlotte during one of his business trips. I didn't make it in time to say goodbye. I could only see a sealed urn with ashes they assured me were his. I spent 730 days visiting Lake Lanier where I scattered those ashes. 730 days talking to the calm waters, telling them about my day, crying through nights he wasn't there anymore. 730 days withering away in that huge house in Buckhead we bought together when the construction business started taking off. But that Saturday, everything changed. I had left early for Lenox Square looking for a birthday gift for my grandson. The October heat was dense, typical of Georgia in fall. Among the stores and the smell of Cinnabon, I saw him. He was at a Starbucks, ordering a grande latte. He wore a white polo shirt I'd never seen, worn Levi's instead of his dress slacks. But it was him, the same man I married at 22, the same man who supposedly died at 68, the same man whose ashes I had scattered crying until I lost my voice. My legs stopped working. My shopping bag fell to the floor. The candle I'd just bought rolled across the tile. People stared at me. I didn't care. My heart was beating so hard I thought I'd have a heart attack right there at 72 years old. David turned around. Our eyes met. For a split second, I saw pure terror in his gaze. Then, like a curtain falling, his expression changed to polite confusion. "Ma'am, are you okay?" His voice, that same raspy voice I'd heard for 4 decades. "David," I whispered. My voice sounded strange, like it was coming from far away. "David, it's you. I think you're confusing me with someone else, ma'am. My name is Richard. Richard Morgan." He took a step back, looking around as if searching for help. "I really don't know you." But I knew every inch of that face. The small scar on his left eyebrow from when he fell off his bike at 15 in Macon. The slightly crooked nose broken in a bar fight he never liked to talk about. The birthmark on his neck shaped like a comma. The way the skin around his eyes wrinkled when he lied. Exactly like in that moment. "Your finger," I managed to say, pointing at his right hand. "The crooked pinky. You broke it fixing your mom's roof." I saw him swallow, how his hands trembled slightly. "Ma'am, lots of people have crooked fingers. You're really mistaken." He paid for his coffee quickly and started walking away. I followed him. I don't know where I found the strength at my age, but I followed him through the mall, past the stores, ignoring the vendors' shouts. I saw him get into an old white Nissan pickup. I memorized the plates, GBR 4729. I ran to my car, a Volkswagen Jetta that David had given me 3 years before his supposed death. My hands were shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get the key in. I followed him through Atlanta's streets, then south, until we reached a small subdivision in East Point I'd never visited. The pickup stopped in front of a modest house painted terracotta. David got out with his coffee. Before he could knock, the door opened. A woman appeared, younger than me, maybe in her early 50s, with dark hair pulled back in a braid. She smiled at him. Not a neighbor's smile, a wife's smile. She kissed him on the lips. I felt my heart being ripped from my chest. 2 kids ran out of the house, a boy and a girl, maybe 7 and 9. They jumped on David yelling, "Grandpa, did you bring donuts for breakfast?" "Grandpa." I stayed in the car, parked half a block away, while the October sun burned me through the windshield. I watched them go inside together. A complete family, a complete life. While I had spent 2 years crying over ashes that probably were never his, I pulled out my phone with hands that didn't feel like mine. I took photos of the house, the truck, the plates. I didn't know what I was going to do with them, but I needed proof. I needed to know I wasn't going crazy. When the sky started turning orange, I started the car and drove home on autopilot. I don't remember the route. I only remember getting to the garage and sitting in the darkness, looking at the photos on my phone. I compared the images with old photos of David I had saved. The birthmark, the scar, the crooked finger. Everything matched. There was no possible doubt. I went into the house. Everything was exactly as I'd left it that morning. The curtains closed, our wedding pictures on the wall, David's photo on the coffee table, the one I'd put there after scattering his ashes, with a candle I lit every night. I sat on the couch, still in the darkness, and then a question pierced my mind like cold lightning. If David is alive, whose ashes did I scatter in the lake 2 years ago? I didn't sleep that night. I stayed sitting at the dining room table with all the photos spread out in front of me. Photos from our wedding at the First Baptist Church in Marietta. Me at 22, a simple white dress my mother had sewn. David at 25, thin, nervous, with that thin mustache he later shaved off. We were poor then. He worked as a construction helper. I sold homemade pies at the farmer's market in the mornings. We lived in a rented room in Old Fourth Ward that barely fit a bed. But we were happy, or at least that's what I believed. Friends, every story I tell you is released every day, but YouTube will only show them to you if you tap the red subscribe button. Please do it now while I'm speaking. Tap subscribe, turn on notifications, and you'll never miss a story. Have you done it yet? Thank you. When Stephen was born 3 years later, things started improving. David had talent for business. In 5 years, he went from helper to having his own small construction company. In 10 years, we owned 3 housing developments in different Atlanta neighborhoods. In 20 years, we owned a business worth millions. Our life changed. Own house in Buckhead, a car for each of us, occasional trips to Hilton Head or the Keys. But David traveled more and more. Charlotte, Savannah, Birmingham, 2-3 times a month. He'd leave for 4 or 5 days. He said it was for contracts, meetings with suppliers, business expansion. I never suspected anything. Why would I? He always came back tired, complaining about traffic and endless meetings. He brought gifts for me and Stephen. He said he missed us. He called every night from wherever he was. Now, looking back with this new terrible clarity, every trip seemed like a perfectly constructed lie. I remembered something. About 5 years ago, David insisted I sign some business papers. He said it was to protect our assets, to ensure Stephen would inherit everything without problems if something happened to us. There were many documents with legal language I didn't understand well. I trusted him. I always trusted him. I signed where he told me to sign. What had I really signed? At 6 in the morning, I called Stephen. He answered with a sleepy voice. "Mom, what's wrong? Are you okay? I need you to come over. Now." "Mom, I have an important meeting at 9. "Stephen." My voice came out hard as stone. "Come now. It's about your father." Silence on the other end. Too long a silence. "What happened, Mom?" "I saw your father yesterday. Alive. At Lenox Square Mall." Another silence, heavier than the first. "Mom, we've talked about this. The grief is affecting you. Maybe you should see the therapist again." "Stephen, I saw your father. I followed him to his house in East Point. He's living with another woman and has grandchildren I didn't know existed. Come now, or I'm going to that house alone to confront him. Don't do anything. I'm on my way." He arrived 35 minutes later. He was wearing gym clothes. He must have run out of his house in Midtown. He came in without knocking. He found me still at the dining room table, surrounded by photos. "Mom, look." I showed him the photos on my phone. First the old ones, then the new ones. I explained every detail. The scar, the birthmark, the crooked finger, the encounter at the mall, the house, the woman, the kids. Stephen looked at the photos in silence. I saw his expression change, from concern to confusion, from confusion to something I couldn't identify. Something like guilt? "Yes, the resemblance is striking," he finally said, returning my phone. "But Mom, people look alike. I've seen cases online of doppelgangers that are incredible." "It's not a resemblance, Stephen. It's him. Mom, we scattered his ashes. You were there. I was there. Jessica, the uncles, his work friends. Everyone was there. A sealed urn," I whispered. "We never saw the body. Because the heart attack was severe. The doctors said it was better that way. That seeing him would be traumatic." "Did you see the body?" Stephen looked away. "Not directly, but the documentation was all there. The death certificate from Charlotte Memorial Hospital. Everything was official." I stood up. "I want to go to that house. Now. You're coming with me." "Mom, this is crazy. We can't just knock on a stranger's door." "So you think he's a stranger?" He hesitated. I saw him clench his jaw, a gesture he'd made since he was a kid when he was nervous. "I think you're suffering, Mom. You've been through a lot. Grief can make us see things we want to see. Stephen Michael Harrison. I used his full name, like when he was a child and got in trouble. Are you coming with me to that house, or am I going alone? Because I'm going. He sighed, defeated. Okay, let's go. But only so you can see it's someone else and you can move on. We left in his black Toyota 4Runner. Sunday morning traffic in Atlanta was light. Stephen drove in silence, knuckles white on the steering wheel. I gave him directions. When we got to the street in East Point, I told him to park a few yards away. That's it, I pointed. The white Nissan pickup was in the driveway. There was a light on in the kitchen. We could see shadows moving behind the curtains. Stephen stared at the house. His fingers drummed on the steering wheel. That same nervous gesture from always. Do you want me to go? I asked him. No, wait. We stayed there maybe 10 minutes. Then the front door opened. Richard came out. He was wearing a mechanic's coverall and carrying a toolbox. He walked toward the pickup. Stephen went pale. Honey, are you okay? He didn't answer. He just stared at the man getting in the truck. The pickup backed out of the driveway. It passed right by us. I could see his face clearly through the window. David. It was David. Older, more tired, but it was him. The truck turned the corner and disappeared. When I looked at Stephen, I saw he was crying. Silent tears ran down his face. Stephen! My stomach clenched. Stephen, what aren't you telling me? He rested his forehead on the steering wheel. His body shook. Mom. His voice came out broken. Mom, I'm so sorry, so sorry. And in that moment, I knew that what I was about to discover would destroy much more than my marriage. It would destroy my entire family. Talk, I ordered. My voice sounded strange, like it belonged to someone else. Someone stronger, harder. Talk now, Stephen. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. He breathed deeply, trying to compose himself. Mom, it wasn't supposed to be like this. You were never supposed to find out. A cold sensation spread through my chest. Find out what? Stephen lifted his head. He looked at me with those dark brown eyes he inherited from his father. Eyes that now carried guilt, fear, shame. Dad didn't die of a heart attack. The words hung in the air between us. Simple, direct, devastating. I knew it. Deep down, from the moment I saw him at the mall, I knew it. But hearing my son confirm it was like taking a punch to the stomach. Continue, I whispered. He's had that other family for 20 years, Mom. That woman, Carolina, her kids, now grandkids. He was living a double life between you two for 20 years. 20 years of lies. I thought about all the trips, all the nights he didn't come home, all the weekends working, all of Stephen's birthdays he missed because he had an important meeting. And you knew? Although I already knew the answer from the way he avoided my gaze. I found out about 4 years ago. It was an accident. I was helping Dad organize some papers at the office, and I found receipts, duplicate purchases, electric bills, water, groceries for 2 houses. I confronted him. And what did he say? That he loved you, Mom. That he never wanted to hurt you. But that he also loved Carolina. That he met her on a business trip to Birmingham. That it was something that just happened, and then he couldn't leave her. He said he tried to end it several times, but couldn't. I laughed. A bitter laugh, without humor. How convenient. The poor guy couldn't leave his mistress. Mom, and you? I turned to him, feeling anger for the first time. You found out, and what? You accepted it? You kept his secret? He begged me. Stephen's voice rose desperately. He said if you found out, you'd destroy everything. That you'd take half the developments, the house, everything. He said he needed time to arrange things, to protect the assets. You mean his money. Stephen lowered his head. I didn't know what to do. He's my father, Mom. And in a way, I also didn't want everything to be lost. The developments, the business he built, that would someday be mine. There it was, pure and simple greed. Tell me everything, I ordered. From the beginning. I want to know every detail of this farce. Stephen breathed deeply. He wiped his face again. 2 years ago, Dad came to see me. He said he couldn't stand the double life anymore, that he wanted to be with Carolina forever, start fresh with just her. But if he asked for a divorce, you'd get half of everything. Community property, I completed, feeling nauseous. We'd been married over 40 years. I'd have a right to half the developments, the house, the savings, about $5 million, maybe more. Yes, he consulted with a lawyer. They said it was inevitable. So he had an idea. Fake his death. Stephen nodded miserably. He knew someone. A homeless man in Charlotte who was dying of pancreatic cancer. Terminal stage. Matter of weeks. The man had no family, just a niece who never visited. Dad offered him money. How much? $80,000 for the niece. It would be transferred after he died. I felt like I was going to vomit. You bought a body. The guy was going to die anyway, Stephen defended weakly. He said at least his niece would have something. And the heart attack? It was planned. Dad traveled to Charlotte like always. The man went with him, with fake documents in David Harrison's name. They checked into the same hotel. That night, Dad gave the man strong sleeping pills. He took him to the ER, saying he'd collapsed. The man was already very weak from the cancer. He died 2 days later in the hospital. And they issued the death certificate as if it were David Harrison. Yes, the body was cremated quickly at the family's request. Nobody suspected anything. I remembered those terrible days, the call from the hospital, Stephen stopping me from traveling to Charlotte, saying he'd take care of everything, the sealed urn that arrived 3 days later, the memorial service we organized in Atlanta, and I scattered the ashes of a stranger while your father started his new life. Stephen nodded, ashamed. Where was he while I was crying? While I was visiting the lake every week talking to the water? He moved straight to East Point with Carolina, changed his identity to Richard Morgan, started working as a mechanic at a small shop, simple life, not calling attention. With $11 million saved. Not exactly. The business passed automatically to me as the sole heir. The 3 developments, the properties, everything. It's all in my name now. I froze. Everything? Dad transferred a lot of things to my name years before, for estate planning, he said. When he died, the rest passed automatically. You kept this house in Buckhead because it was already in your name, and I gave you a monthly allowance of $5,000, I said slowly. Less than a maid makes. Mom, it was what we could. While you kept $11 million, my voice echoed inside the Forerunner. While your father ran off with everything and I lived on scraps. The tears finally came, hot, bitter, furious. I had cried so much for David for 2 years. Now I was crying for myself, for the fool I'd been. And the house in East Point? I asked when I could speak again. It's in Carolina's name. She bought it years ago with money from her own family. At least that didn't come from us. How generous. Stephen ran his hands over his face. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to do. He's my father, and I'm your mother. The silence that followed was crushing. Take me home, I finally said. Mom, we need to talk about... Take me home. He drove in silence. When we arrived, I got out without looking at him. Mom, please. I slammed the door and went inside without turning around. I went straight to the bedroom. I opened the closet. From the top shelf, I took down a shoebox where I kept important documents. Old bills, deeds, business papers David had asked me to sign over the years. I spread them on the bed. I started reading. Really reading. Not just signing where they told me. Property transfers, name changes on deeds, powers of attorney, all signed by me, all legal, all perfectly planned to leave me with nothing. I had been an idiot, a trusting fool who signed her own ruin, but not anymore. I grabbed my phone and searched online. Divorce Lawyers Fraud Atlanta. The name Teresa Gutierrez appeared, specialist in estate fraud. The reviews were excellent. I dialed the number. A secretary answered. Gutierrez Law Firm. I need an urgent appointment. Are you already a client? No, but I have a case of fraud, death falsification, and estate theft that I think will interest her a lot. A pause. Can you come tomorrow at 10 a.m.? I'll be there. I hung up. I looked out the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple. A beautiful day. The last day of peace David and Stephen would have for a long, long time, because I was going to make them pay, both of them. Every penny they stole from me, every tear I cried, every night I spent talking to false ashes. They were going to return everything to me, and much more. If you want to know how this story ends and discover many more, hit the red subscribe button. It's free, and it helps me a lot. Teresa Gutierrez wasn't what I expected. When I entered her office in the Peachtree Tower, I found a woman around 45 with short hair and thick-framed glasses. She wore a gray pantsuit that exuded professionalism. Her eyes were sharp, the kind that don't miss a single detail. Mrs. Harrison, she extended her hand. Her grip was firm. Please, have a seat. I settled into the leather chair across from her desk. Through the windows, you could see all of Atlanta. Below, People lived their normal lives, oblivious to the dramas unfolding on the upper floors. My assistant said you have a case of fraud and death falsification. I put the phone photos on her desk and started talking. I told her everything. The 40 years of marriage, David's constant trips, the second family that lasted 20 years, the fake death, the bought body, the memorial service where I cried for real while my husband was alive, my son who knew everything, the millions diverted to his name, the miserable $5,000 monthly allowance. Teresa listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes on her tablet. When I finished, she spent several minutes reviewing the photos, zooming in, comparing. Finally, she leaned back in her chair and whistled softly. Mrs. Harrison, this is pure dynamite. I know. Do you understand the gravity? We're talking about multiple crimes: identity fraud, impersonation, concealment of a body, document falsification, estate theft, tax evasion. She enumerated them on her fingers. Your husband could face between 5 and 12 years in prison. Your son, as an accomplice, between 3 and 8 years. I felt a cold satisfaction in my chest. Good. She looked at me, evaluating. Do you want to press criminal charges against both? I want justice. I want to recover every penny they stole from me, and I want them to pay for what they did. Teresa nodded. Then we need to build an airtight case. I'm going to need documents, marriage certificate, the fake death certificate, all the business papers you signed, bank statements if you have them. I have everything at home. I can bring it tomorrow. Perfect. We'll also need a recorded confession. You said your son told you everything. Do you have a recording? My stomach sank. No, it was in the car. I didn't expect it. Then we need him to confess again, but this time recorded. How? Teresa pulled a small digital recorder from her drawer. You're going to invite your son to lunch. You're going to tell him you want to make peace, that you understand he was in a difficult position. You're going to make him comfortable. And then naturally, you're going to steer the conversation to the topic. Get him to repeat everything. And if he suspects, if you're a good actress, he won't. And from your expression, Mrs. Harrison, I think you've been acting for the last 2 years every time you smiled when you wanted to cry. She was right. There's one more thing, Teresa said seriously. I need documents proving your son sold properties or transferred money from the business. Bank records, deeds, contracts. He probably has them in his office. Can you get access? I thought about it. Stephen had always given me keys to everything just in case. I'd never used them, but I had them. I can. Excellent. Because if we get those documents showing he made fraudulent transactions without your consent, that he forged signatures, she gave a satisfied clap on the desk. It's over. He has no defense. I left that office 2 hours later with a clear plan. A plan that would destroy my son's life. And for the first time since I discovered the truth, I didn't feel guilt. I felt power. That night, after thinking about it for hours, I dialed Stephen's number. He answered on the first ring. Mom? Can we talk? Surprised silence. Of course, Mom. Do you want me to come over? No. I want us to have lunch together tomorrow, at the Capitol Grill, that restaurant you like, at 1. Yes, I'll be there. See you tomorrow, son. I hung up before he could continue. The recorder was in my purse, already on, when I arrived at the restaurant. Teresa had instructed me. Leave it open on the table, as close to Stephen as possible. The device was sensitive. It would capture everything. Stephen arrived 5 minutes late. He looked terrible. Dark circles, unshaven, wrinkled dress shirt. When he saw me, he almost ran to the table. Mom, he tried to hug me. I allowed it, but without warmth. We sat down. We ordered food. Neither of us would eat. Mom, I don't know where to start. Then let me talk first. I took a sip of water. I've spent these days thinking a lot, Stephen, about what you told me, about the decisions you and your father made. I paused, choosing words carefully. And I understand you were in an impossible position. Your father manipulated you. He put you in a situation where you had to choose. I saw surprise in his eyes. Mom, let me finish. You were the son. It wasn't your responsibility to fix the mess your father made. He was the adult, the one who made the cowardly decision. Stephen started crying. I wanted to tell you, Mom, every day, but I was afraid. I know. I reached over, took his hand across the table. The contact repulsed me, but I kept my expression kind. But now I need to understand everything. I need you to tell me from the beginning, with details. Only then can I process it and maybe, someday, forgive. He squeezed my hand, desperate. Anything, Mom. Ask anything. For the next hour, Stephen repeated the whole story. David's plan, the dying man, the $80,000 paid, the fake death in Charlotte, the estate transfers, everything. The recorder captured every word. When we finished, I stood up. I need time to think about all this, Stephen. Give me a few days. Are you going to forgive me? I looked at him. I don't know, but at least now I understand. I left the restaurant and called Teresa. I have the recording. Perfect. Now we need the documents from his office. That same afternoon, using the keys I had, I entered the offices of Harrison Construction on Northside Parkway. It was empty. It was Sunday. I went straight to Stephen's office. In the filing cabinet I found everything. Sales contracts, bank transfers, documents with my forged signature, proof that he had sold 2 of the 3 developments without my consent, pocketing over $8 million. I took photos of everything with my phone. Then I made copies on the office printer. I put everything in a folder and left. 2 days later, Teresa filed the complaint with the Fulton County District Attorney. Fraud, death falsification, estate theft, signature forgery. The assigned prosecutor was Patricia Moreno, known for being relentless in fraud cases against seniors. Your son will be arrested within 48 hours, Teresa informed me. The evidence is overwhelming. And regarding Richard Morgan, we're going to request the invalidation of his false identity and the annulment of the death certificate. Once it's proven that David Harrison never died, he can be prosecuted for all the crimes. How long? With the evidence we have, I'd say there's a 95% chance of conviction. Your son, if he cooperates, could reduce his sentence. But your husband, between 8 and 12 years in prison. I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. And the money? Ah, Teresa smiled. That's the best part. The arrest warrant was issued on a Tuesday morning. Teresa called me as soon as it was issued. The police are on their way to your son's house, and there's more news. Tell me. Stephen panicked last night. He tried to transfer $2 million to an account in Panama. He has an account in Panama? He opened it a week ago. He probably sensed something was coming. But I had asked the judge to freeze all his accounts preventively. The transfer was blocked. And now? Now he's being held without bail for attempted capital flight, in addition to everything else. With good behavior, he'll get out in 4 years. Without it, 7. Stephen, my son, in prison. I should have felt something. Sadness, regret. But I only felt that cold emptiness that had been with me for days. And the properties? We've filed to annul all the sales. As they were made with falsified documents, they're void. The developments will return to the marital estate. As David is technically alive but using a false identity, the judge has named you temporary administrator. What does that mean? That you can sell them, manage them, whatever you want. They're yours now. 3 developments. The business we built together for 40 years, finally in my hands. How much are they worth? With the current market, approximately $13 million. They've appreciated in value. $13 million. 40 years of marriage reduced to a number. Teresa, there's something else I need you to do. Tell me. I want to personally deliver a notice to David, to his house in East Point. I want him to know it was me who found him, me who destroyed his perfect little life. Teresa hesitated. Are you sure? It could be dangerous. I'm sure. And it's not dangerous. David is many things. A liar, a coward, a thief. But he was never violent. All right. I'll prepare the documents. 2 days later, on a Thursday morning, I drove to East Point with an envelope full of legal papers. My heart was beating fast, but my hands were steady on the wheel. I parked in front of the terracotta house. The white Nissan pickup was there. I walked to the door. I rang the bell. Footsteps approaching. The door opened. Carolina appeared. She looked at me confused. Yes? I'm looking for Richard Morgan. He's in the back workshop. Can I help you? I need to talk to him personally. It's urgent. She hesitated, then nodded. 1 moment. She closed the door. I heard voices inside, then heavier footsteps. The door opened again. There he was, David, my husband of 40 years, with a grease-stained t-shirt, old jeans, flip-flops. His gray hair was messy. He had sweat on his forehead. But it was him. Our eyes met. I saw immediate recognition, panic, fear. Margaret, he whispered. Hearing my name from that mouth after 2 years was like a slap. Hello, David. I smiled. Or should I call you Richard? He looked back, where Carolina probably was. Then his eyes returned to me. What are you doing here? I came to deliver some mail. I extended the envelope. Legal notice. You need to sign the acknowledgement of receipt. He didn't take it. He just stared at me, pale. How did you find me? It wasn't hard. Same city, same habits, same face. Did you think I'd never find you? That I'd spend the rest of my life crying over false ashes? Margaret, I can explain. Can you? I laughed. Are you going to explain how you faked your death? How you bought a dying man's body? How you let me scatter a stranger's ashes in the lake? Keep your voice down, he whispered, looking nervously toward the house. Carolina. Carolina doesn't know, I guessed. She doesn't know Richard Morgan doesn't exist. That you're David Harrison, legally married to me for 40 years. The door opened fully. Carolina appeared, confused. Richard, what's going on? Who is this woman? David closed his eyes. I'm his wife, I said before he could speak. His legal wife, Margaret Harrison, married to David Harrison since 1983. This man you know as Richard is my husband. He faked his death 2 years ago to run away from me and be with you. Carolina's face lost all color. What? Richard? Tell me she's lying. But David said nothing. He just looked at the ground. He has a scar on his left eyebrow. I continued relentlessly. A crooked pinky on his right hand. A dark birthmark on his neck. Want to check for yourself? Carolina looked at David, waiting for him to deny it, but he just hung his head. Richard, her voice broke. Richard, look at me. Carolina, I can explain. Oh my God. She backed away. It's true. It's all true. Carolina, listen. You lied to me. She started crying. 20 years. You fooled me for 20 years. It's not like that. I love you. I don't even know your real name. The tears ran down her face. She turned and ran back into the house. We heard a door slam. David took a step to follow her, but stopped. He looked at me with a mixture of anger and desperation. Are you happy? You've destroyed my life. Your life. My voice came out low, dangerous. You destroyed mine first. 40 years, David. I was your faithful, dedicated, present wife. I raised our son while you built another family. I cried at your fake death while you remade your life. I was going to leave you the house, a decent allowance. $5,000, I spat. You took $11 million and thought $5,000 was generous. I worked for that money. We worked, my voice rose, while you ran the business. Who kept the home? Who raised your son? Who gave up her own life so you could succeed? Silence. Take the envelope, I ordered. With trembling hands, he took it. He opened it. He started reading. I saw his expression change. Shock, fear, panic. You're suing me for fraud, falsification, identity theft, and concealment of a body, I completed. The DA has already accepted the case. Your identity as Richard Morgan will be annulled. Soon you'll be David Harrison again. And then you'll answer for all of this. I don't have money for a lawyer. You should have thought of that before. He staggered. Margaret, please. How old are you, David? 70? 71. Prison at that age. I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't need to. Please, he whispered, for the years we lived together. The years we lived together, I repeated, were a lie, from beginning to end. I turned and walked toward my car. Margaret, he shouted behind me. I didn't turn around. I got in the car, started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw him standing at the entrance with the envelope in his hands. Carolina had come out behind him. She was crying, screaming something I couldn't hear. His perfect life was crumbling, and I had been the earthquake. I drove home with steady hands, a calm heart. When I arrived, I called Teresa. I delivered the notice. Any problems? None. He completely broke down. Good. The arrest warrant will be issued in 48 hours. Are you ready? More than ever. 3 months later, I was sitting on the terrace of a new house in Tybee Island, a house facing the ocean that I bought with money from selling one of the developments. The sound of the waves was the only thing breaking the silence. David had been arrested as I predicted. He's serving a 10-year sentence for fraud, identity falsification, and concealment of a body. At 71, he'll probably die in prison. Stephen got out on bail after accepting a deal with the prosecution. He testified against his father in exchange for a reduced sentence. He'll serve 4 years, with the possibility of getting out in 2 with good behavior. I haven't spoken to him since his arrest. When he called from jail, I didn't answer. When he wrote letters, I burned them without reading. Maybe someday I can forgive him, But today is not that day. The 3 developments were valued at $13 million. I sold 2. The third I donated to an organization that helps women victims of estate theft. Women like me, who were robbed and deceived by their own families. With the money I recovered, plus the damages the judge ordered paid, I ended up with almost $16 million. I invested half in safe funds that give me a passive income of $20,000 a month. The other half I dedicated to projects. First project, I donated $400,000 to a nonprofit that helps women victims of financial and estate abuse. Women like me, who had been robbed, deceived, and manipulated by their families. Second project, I bought a small shop in downtown Savannah and went back to baking. Not because I needed the money, but because it was my passion before I gave it up to be just a wife and mother. Now, at 72, I was reclaiming who I was before all this. David had been sentenced to 10 years in prison. With Stephen's deal, he couldn't get even 1 day reduced. He's serving his sentence in a medium security facility. Carolina no longer visits him. The grandkids don't even really know where he is. The family invented a story that he'd moved far away. Stephen spent a month in a work release center for good behavior. He works in a carpentry shop inside the prison, earning minimum wage. I'd been told that Jessica had divorced him and was already dating someone else. I visited him once a month. The conversations were short, still tense, but he seemed different, more humble, more self-aware. Maybe prison was really changing something in him, or maybe it was just my imagination. Time would tell. Margaret, are you okay? Carmen nudged me. My childhood friend who was visiting. You got really quiet suddenly. I'm great. I smiled, and it was true. Just thinking about how much life can change in a few months. Changed for the better, Carmen said, raising her glass. A toast to our friend who went to hell and came back stronger. I don't know if I came back stronger, I reflected, but I came back more aware, more vigilant, more myself. That's being stronger, Carmen smiled. Because strength isn't not falling, it's getting up after you fall. We clinked our glasses. Looking out at the ocean, I thought about everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained. I lost my innocence, my ability to trust blindly, the fantasy that family was sacred by definition. But I gained self-knowledge, independence, the certainty that I could survive the worst and still choose to live, not just exist. 6 months after the trip, it was a Saturday morning when I got the call. Margaret, this is Teresa Gutierrez. Good morning. Has something happened? David had a heart attack in prison yesterday. He was in the infirmary. He didn't make it. The phone almost slipped from my hand. He's dead. Yes, for real this time. The body will be released to the family. Since you were technically still married, you're the next of kin. David was dead. For real this time. I felt nothing. Not sadness, not relief, not anger. Just a distant emptiness. What do I need to do? You need to decide about the funeral. If you want to bury him, cremate him, where? I thought about the urn at the funeral home where a stranger was. Cremate him and scatter the ashes in the ocean with no ceremony. Are you sure? Absolutely. He already had a funeral. A very expensive one, by the way. He's not getting another one. Stephen has been notified. He's asking to attend the funeral. There is no funeral. He can say goodbye to the ashes later if he wants, but I'm not putting on a show. Not again. I hung up and sat in silence on the terrace of my shop. David was dead. The man I loved for 40 years. The man who betrayed me for 20. The man who faked his own death to abandon me. Now he was really dead, and I felt at peace because I didn't owe him anything anymore. Not love, not hate, not forgiveness. He was just part of my past now, a painful part that taught me valuable lessons. 1 year after it all started, I was in my shop sewing a wedding dress for a client's daughter when Stephen appeared at the door. He'd been given parole 3 weeks ago. He was thinner, short hair, neatly trimmed beard. He wore simple clothes, jeans, and a white shirt. Mom, can I come in? You can. He came in slowly, looking around. The shop was small but cozy. Mannequins covered in fabric, sewing machines, spools of colorful thread. Your space is beautiful here. Thank you. What brings you here? He breathed deeply. I came to say goodbye. Goodbye? I'm moving to Asheville. I got a job at a custom furniture shop. It's a fresh start, away from everything, from everyone, where nobody knows my story. I understand. And before I leave, I needed to thank you for not giving up on me completely, for visiting me in prison even when I didn't deserve it, for coming to scatter Dad's ashes with me, for giving me this last chance to be someone better. I put down my sewing, stood up. Stephen, I haven't given you any chance. You're the one building this with hard work, with different decisions, with humility. That's all your merit. Still, you could have abandoned me completely, and you didn't, because I'm your mother. And mothers don't abandon, but they don't cover up either. That's been my biggest lesson this year. True love is letting a person face the consequences and grow from them. He nodded with tearful eyes. I'm going to make it work in Asheville. I'm going to rebuild my life from scratch. And one day I'm going to make you proud of me again. I'm already proud of the man you're trying to be. He approached hesitantly. I opened my arms, and for the first time in over a year, I hugged my son for real. Not a formal hug, but a mother's hug. When he left, carrying only a suitcase and an uncertain future, I stood in the shop doorway watching him go. And I realized I had accomplished something rare. I had turned pain into growth, betrayal into wisdom, loss into a new beginning. Today, 2 years after seeing David alive at that Lenox Square Mall, I wake up every day in my house, go to my shop, sew my designs, have coffee with my friends. I have $20,000 a month in passive income. My shop gives me another $10,000. I don't need anything or anyone. Stephen calls me every week from Asheville. He's dating a woman there. Honest, hardworking. He says one day he wants me to meet her. Maybe I'll go, or maybe I'll ask them to come here. I haven't gone back to visit the stranger's urn at the funeral home since I learned the truth. I had a simple plaque put on it. Here lies an unknown man. May he find peace. Because that urn was never my husband's. It was my innocence, and that deserved to rest in peace. Sometimes when I'm sewing, I think about everything that happened, and I wonder, was it worth it? Destroying my family, putting my son in prison, publicly exposing all that pain? And the answer is always the same, yes, because I learned that dignity is non-negotiable. That respect isn't something you beg for. That self-love is worth more than any family bond built on a lie. I learned it's never too late to demand justice. That being 72 doesn't mean you have to accept everything in silence. That age doesn't just bring wisdom, but also courage. And most importantly, I learned that the best revenge isn't destroying whoever hurt you. It's rebuilding yourself, stronger, freer, more yourself than ever. The legal battle had been long. Teresa fought tooth and nail for every penny. The judge was sympathetic, especially after hearing the recorded confession and seeing all the forged documents. In the end, the ruling was clear. The estate division was voided. All properties returned to my name. Stephen was ordered to pay restitution plus interest for the fraudulent sales. David's accounts were seized, and the funds returned to me. But beyond the money, beyond the legal victories, what mattered most was what I discovered about myself. For 40 years, I had been David's wife. For 30 years, I had been Stephen's mother. I had molded myself around their needs, their dreams, their ambitions. I had made myself small so they could be big, no more. Now I was Margaret, just Margaret, a woman who baked pies, who sewed wedding dresses, who had coffee with friends on Saturday mornings, who walked on the beach at sunrise, who read books she'd always wanted to read but never had time for. I joined a book club. I took painting classes. I volunteered at the women's shelter where I donated money. I traveled to places David had always said were too touristy or not worth it. I went to Paris. I saw the Eiffel Tower light up at night. I ate croissants in small cafes. I walked along the Seine alone, and it was perfect. I went to Iceland. I saw the northern lights dance across the sky. I soaked in hot springs. I felt small under the vast beauty of nature, and it was humbling. I went to Japan during cherry blossom season. I walked through gardens of pink petals falling like snow. I stayed in a traditional ryokan. I learned to appreciate the beauty of simplicity. Each trip, each new experience was a declaration. I'm alive. I'm free. I'm me. Carmen came with me on some trips. On others, I went alone. And I discovered I liked both. I liked sharing experiences with a friend, but I also liked the solitude, the ability to move at my own pace, to change plans on a whim, to sit in a cafe for hours with a book, and no one asking when we were leaving. The shop became my sanctuary. Not just a business, but a place where I created beauty. Every dress I sewed was a small masterpiece. Every customer who came in became a friend. I learned their stories, their dreams, their fears. Many were women like me, women who had lost themselves in marriages, in motherhood, in taking care of everyone but themselves. Women who were rediscovering who they were after divorce, after their children left home, after life had knocked them down. We formed an unofficial support group. We'd have coffee together on slow days. We'd share our stories. We'd laugh at our past naivety. We'd celebrate our current strength. I hired 2 young seamstresses to help with the workload, Maria and Jasmine. Both were talented, both were hungry to learn. I taught them not just sewing techniques, but business skills, how to price their work, how to negotiate with suppliers, how to value themselves. Don't make the mistakes I made, I told them. Don't give away your talents for free. Don't shrink yourself for anyone. Don't wait for permission to be great. They listened. They learned. And watching them grow gave me a different kind of joy than I'd known as a mother. This wasn't about obligation or biology. This was about choice, about wanting to lift up other women because I knew how hard the climb was. Stephen's calls evolved over time. At first they were stilted, full of apologies and shame. Gradually they became more natural. He'd tell me about his work, about Sarah, the woman he was dating, about the pottery classes he was taking. "I'm learning to create things with my hands," he said one day. "There's something therapeutic about it, taking raw clay and shaping it into something useful, something beautiful." I understood. I was doing the same with my life. He asked about visiting for Thanksgiving. I said yes. He asked if Sarah could come. I said yes to that too. They came in November. Sarah was lovely, quiet, thoughtful, with kind eyes and an easy laugh. She worked as a librarian. She loved books and cats and terrible reality TV shows. She was perfect for him. We cooked together, the 3 of us. Turkey, stuffing, sweet potato casserole, pecan pie. We set the table with my good china. We said grace. "I'm thankful for second chances," Stephen said, his voice thick with emotion. "For a mother who loved me enough to let me face consequences. For a woman who sees who I'm becoming, not who I was. For the chance to build a life I'm proud of." Sarah squeezed his hand. I felt tears prick my eyes. "I'm thankful for truth," I said, "even when it hurts, even when it destroys, because only in the rubble can we rebuild something real." We ate, we talked, we laughed. It wasn't the family I had before, but it was real, and that made it better. They left the next day. As I hugged Stephen goodbye, he whispered, "I'm proud to be your son, Mom." I held him tighter. "I'm proud of who you're becoming." After they left, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sun set over the marsh. The sky turned orange, then pink, then purple. The Spanish moss swayed in the breeze. A heron flew past, graceful and solitary. I thought about David, about the man I thought he was, about the man he actually was, about the 40 years I gave him, and I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was free. Free from the illusion, free from the betrayal, free from the need for his love or validation or approval. He had thought leaving me would set him free. Instead, he'd freed me. The seasons changed. Summer heat gave way to mild fall, then cool winter, then blooming spring. Life continued its rhythm. I celebrated my 74th birthday surrounded by friends. Carmen threw me a party at her house. 20 women, all over 60, all vibrant and alive and full of laughter. We drank wine. We ate too much cake. We danced to old Motown songs in her living room. "To Margaret," Carmen raised her glass, "who taught us all that it's never too late to choose yourself." They cheered. I blushed, but I also glowed, because it was true. I had chosen myself, and it was the best decision I'd ever made. The shop thrived. Word spread about the quality of my work. Brides came from all over Georgia, even from neighboring states, to have me make their dresses. Each one was custom, made with care, a labor of love. I loved the consultations, sitting with a young woman, listening to her dreams for her wedding day, helping her envision the perfect dress, then bringing that vision to life, stitch by stitch. Sometimes brides brought their mothers. I'd watch them together, the easy affection, the shared excitement, and I'd feel a small pang, not for David, but for what I'd lost with Stephen during those dark years. But then I'd remember Thanksgiving, his progress, his growth, and I'd know. We were finding our way back, slowly, carefully, but genuinely. I started writing, not a memoir exactly, but stories, fictionalized versions of real experiences, stories about women finding strength, about betrayal and survival, about the power of truth. I joined a writing group. We met every other Wednesday at a local coffee shop. I read my stories aloud. They gave feedback. Some of it stung, but it made me better. One day, one of the women said, "Margaret, these are really good. Have you thought about publishing?" I hadn't. Writing was just for me, a way to process, a creative outlet. But the idea planted itself, and it grew. I hired an editor, a writing coach. I revised, I polished, I sent queries to literary agents. Most said no. That was okay. I kept sending, until one said yes. "I love these stories," she wrote. "They're raw and real and powerful. Let's find them a home." It took another year, but eventually a small press offered me a contract. My collection of short stories would be published. Rebuilding After the Rubble, we called it. When the book came out, I had a launch party at my shop. Friends, customers, writing group members, even a few strangers who'd heard about it. Stephen and Sarah drove down from Asheville. He brought flowers. "I'm so proud of you, Mom," he said. I signed copies. I read an excerpt aloud. People clapped. Some cried. A woman approached me afterwards. She was young, maybe early 30s, with red-rimmed eyes. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for writing this, for sharing your story. My husband I just found out he's been—" She couldn't finish. I hugged her. "You're going to be okay," I told her. "It doesn't feel like it now, but you will survive this, and on the other side you'll find yourself again." She cried on my shoulder, and I held her, this stranger, this sister in pain, because I'd been her, and I knew the road ahead, and I knew she could walk it. As the evening wound down, as people said their goodbyes, I stood in my shop, surrounded by sewing machines and bolts of fabric and copies of my book, and I marveled at this life I'd built, a life David didn't plan, a life Stephen didn't benefit from, a life that was entirely, completely, gloriously mine. I thought about the woman I was 2 years ago, broken, betrayed, drowning in grief for a man who wasn't dead, and a life that never existed. That woman was gone, not erased, but transformed, forged in fire, tempered by truth. I thought about what I'd tell her if I could go back, what wisdom I'd impart. "It's going to hurt," I'd say, "more than you think you can bear. You'll cry until you're empty. You'll rage until you're exhausted. You'll question everything you thought you knew. But on the other side of that pain is freedom, real freedom, not the illusion of a happy marriage, not the comfort of willful ignorance, but the solid ground of truth. You'll lose things, your marriage, your innocence, your trust in people, the fantasy of family loyalty. But you'll gain more than you lost: self-respect, independence, clarity, peace. You'll discover you're stronger than you knew, braver than you believed, more capable than anyone gave you credit for. You'll build a life that's real, messy, imperfect, but honest, and that honesty will heal you in ways you can't yet imagine. So grieve, rage, fall apart. But then, when you're ready, choose yourself. Every single time. Choose truth over comfort. Choose dignity over peace. Choose you. Because you're worth it. You always were. You just didn't know it yet. That's what I'd tell her. That's what I'd tell any woman facing betrayal, facing loss, facing the shattering of everything she thought was solid. You will survive, and more than survive. You will thrive. I locked up the shop, drove home to my little beach house, made myself dinner, poured a glass of wine, sat on the porch watching the stars come out. The ocean whispered its eternal song. The night air was soft and warm. Somewhere in the distance, someone was playing guitar. I raised my glass to the sky. "To David," I said, "thank you for leaving. It was the greatest gift you ever gave me." I drank, and I smiled, because I meant it. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that ever happened. Not because the pain wasn't real, but because it woke you up, shook you out of complacency, forced you to face truth. And in that truth, if you're brave enough to embrace it, you find yourself, the real you, not the version you thought you were supposed to be, not the role you played for others, but the authentic, powerful, beautiful you that was always there, waiting to be discovered. That's the woman I became. That's the life I built, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Not for the comfort of ignorance, not for the illusion of a happy marriage, not even to erase the pain, because the pain made me, and I like who I am now. I'm Margaret Harrison. I'm 74 years old. I'm a seamstress, a writer, a friend, a survivor, a fighter, a woman who chose herself. And that's enough. More than enough. It's everything. If you enjoyed this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments what part impressed you. There's more tomorrow. See you there.